Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Kleinkunst. My name is Dusty Academic. I thought I'd tell you a short paper about the topic this evening. Providing a strict and exhausting definition of a cultural phenomenon such as cabaret is like trying to catch smoke. The term has numerous associations. A glance at dictionary.com suggests 1. A restaurant serving food, drink, music, a dance floor, and sometimes a floor show. 2. A cafe that serves food and drink and offers entertainment, often of an improvisatory, satirical, or topical nature. 3. A floor show consisting of such entertainment. 4. A form of theatrical entertainment consisting mainly of political satire in the form of skits, songs, and improvisation. 5. A decoratively painted porcelain copy of tea service tray, produced especially in the 18th century. To these may be added, depending on whom you ask, a strip club, a drag show, or singing on a cruise liner. Having performed in cabaret for nearly 10 years now, the best I can come up with is that cabaret is both a venue and a kind of entertainment that takes place there, in a relatively intimate space, with direct audience address, usually a variety of short acts, usually some kind of music, and almost always the serving of alcohol. In this paper, I'm going to propose that there is a sufficiently stable set of characteristics to define cabaret as a genre, but then I'm going to subvert that proposal by suggesting we use the term Kleinkunst, simply because it doesn't have the enormous breadth and ambiguity of the term cabaret. I'm going to argue that historically Kleinkunst has been a form wherein marginal, repressed, subversive, emergent, divergent, resistant voices can be heard. And to illustrate the playfulness and intimacy that I think are intrinsic to Kleinkunst, I've taken the liberty of printing academic bingo cards, which you'll find if you're lucky enough to be seated at one of the tables. There's one per table. There's no need to struggle. Now, what you do is, when I use the term indicated on the card, you cross that out, and if you get a line of 4, either vertically or horizontally, you'll win a prize. Since you're all really just keen to win the prize, I'm going to rattle through the paper. A little history, just to contextualise, for which I'm very much indebted to Lisa Opinionese's definitive book, The Cabaret. The term cabaret simply means a tap room or a tavern. But cabaret, in the sense that she used it, did not start until the late 19th century with the opening of Le Chat Noir by Rodolphe Sailly, a place where people could not simply gather to hear songs and drink alcohol, but, in her view, a place where, although laughter and entertainment were of its essence, the cabaret was immediately a more intellectual and self-consciously artistic form. Le Chat Noir was located in Montmartre, which at the time was on the outskirts of Paris and very much inhabited by the Parisian demi-monde, with a strong concentration of impoverished artists and intellectuals, along with the working classes and the denizens of les rues. Sailly created his cabaret specifically as a salon of fellow artists. It quickly became one of the most celebrated nighttime destinations in Paris, drawing an audience from all social strata. Entertainment there ranged from simple chansons to shadow plays of extraordinary technical and artistic virtuosity. Cabarets sprung up all over Europe. You must understand, of course, this is before Twitter. So this was the only way people actually could communicate with each other in the vernacular. Many of them are now forever associated with the birth of modernism in Europe. Picasso, for example, designed the menus at Quatre Chats and the Le Panagile, while Dada was born at the Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich. Even London had a cabaret ever so briefly. With the end of Wilhelmine rule in Germany and the relaxation of what had been extremely strict censorship, Berlin became the most cosmopolitan city in Europe, and its cabarets became what, for many of us, still represents the archetype of cabaret. The city drew all comers, many escaping from less liberal societies. Now, most of its cabarets were simply bars which delivered sentimental songs or erotic entertainment, but there were a select few which were the homes of major thinkers and artists. But let's just keep in mind, and Opinionese is the first to admit this, our idea of the intellectual artistic cabaret is not the norm, it's actually the exception. The reason we remember these is because they were the memorable ones. Post-World War II, the term cabaret starts to lose some of its consistency, and this of course can be traced in some ways to recording of music, the mass media, television, radio, and so forth. To the point now, the term cabaret can mean a drag show, even desperate attempt to add a little bit of atmosphere to an otherwise dry function by arranging some of the tables. It is interesting that the term cabaret, which is the German for cabaret, now in Germany specifically denotes a kind of highly politicized stand-up or sketch comedy. The term used in Germany for a small-scale bill, such as this one, is Kleinkunst, which means little art. Little, not just in the sense that the stage is small and the acts are short. It is in contrast to a much more lavish term, Gesamtkunstwerk, the total artwork to which Wagner aspired, in which every element, text, music, mise en scène, was subordinated to a greater whole, whereas Kleinkunst is the opposite. Each thing is self-contained, cheap to produce, cheerful, entertaining. You can have a variety of acts on one night, like this one. So what then is Kleinkunst? It's a genre, it's not a venue. And I want to look at some of those generic characteristics, pencils in hand, please. Some of those generic characteristics. Because I'm going to make the case, convincing or otherwise, that it's these characteristics that make Kleinkunst particularly suited to heteroglossic voices. You all look down there. Number one, the venue is small and intimate. Small venues are cheaper to run and easier to fill, especially when the entertainment is of a niche variety and the likely audience is small anyway. A small venue lends a degree of intimacy often lacking in a theatre. This, for me, is the defining characteristic of Kleinkunst. There is no fourth wall. Accordingly, there's no pretense of realism. The mere fact that I acknowledge you as the audience and you acknowledge me as performer means that I cannot pretend this is all something that you are simply eavesdropping on. This is a classic alienation effect, and there is no question that Brecht was strongly influenced by the cabarets, both as a spectator and as a performer, when he formulated his theories of the epic theatre. This intimacy and immediacy create a sense of spontaneity and responsiveness, a complicity between performer and audience, which again is often lacking in more conventional theatre. The performance is always on the verge of commenting on itself, of becoming a meta-communication about the performance. This encourages a high degree of playfulness. Indeed, becomes a genre expectation of Kleinkunst. The acts are short and there is variety. It's not always the case. It's possible to have a cabaret show in which there's just one performer for 2 hours. But historically, Kleinkunst shows have had variety bills. Again, material reasons are the reason for this. This cabaret is suited to this kind of performance because it's cheap to produce. Each act brings their act with them. There's no need to build a set for them. It's very, very easy to get things on the go. 3, alcohol is served. Kleinkunst was born in the back rooms of taverns, and many cabarets still take place in that context. The sale of alcohol is often the main source of income for the venue. Alcohol's neurological effects are complicit with Kleinkunst as a genre. Alcohol reduces inhibitions, which encourage playfulness and audience engagement. It diminishes critical thinking, which allows for a greater freedom on the part of performers to improvise and experiment. It shortens the attention span. I cannot sufficiently emphasize the importance of alcohol in Kleinkunst. 4, there is usually music. It's not always the case, but when you call something a poetry cabaret, the title tells you straight away it's a night of poetry, and therefore music will be absent. There's no need to say a musical cabaret, as we tend to assume that's always the case. 5, Kleinkunst is associated with a diverse audience, with topicality, and with culturally and artistic avant-garde experimentation. Much of modernism seems to have been born in the back rooms of taverns. The diversity of the audience is a function of the fact that cabarets are relatively cheap places to be entertained in. This makes them attractive to artists who are usually poor. Such artists who have limited access to the cultural means of production could find in such places opportunities to express their views, polemicize, try out new work and new forms, since the cost of production is minimal. They could mix high art and low art, since there was no expectation that an evening of cabaret would add up to anything as a whole. Many of the artists who frequented the cabarets were trained and highly skilled, and naturally brought their high art praxis into a low art world of the cabaret. The murals at the Cave of the Golden Calf in London, for example, were painted by Wyndham Lewis. 6, Kleinkunst is satirical. Again, not always, but as the artistic home of the marginalised, the disenfranchised, the avant-garde, the freethinkers, the dirt poor, it is only to be expected that some of their time will be devoted to critiquing hegemonic culture and poking fun at the powerful. Moreover, it's easy to be topical when your act is short and there's no need to build a set. The playfulness, which I've suggested is intrinsic to Kleinkunst, is also part of this, as it encourages unseriousness, the inversion of convention and the questioning of the status quo. What draws these people to the cabarets or the Kleinkunst venues is more than cheap booze, although I'm certain that is a factor. High art mixes with low, popular with elitist, the intellectual with the sentimental or the erotic. In fact, I would suggest that cabarets are liminal spaces, in which ordinary, was that a bingo? Getting close up to you can taste it. In which ordinary conventions are, if not inverted, at least temporarily suspended. The self-consciousness of cabaret performance liberates it from the need to conform to any idea of realism. In fact, it subverts the idea of realism. There's no need to assume that you have to subscribe to hegemonic representations of what is real. This playfulness makes it ideal for satire, parody, and burlesque, and so forth. And quite apart from the usual complement of demi-mondaine one expects to find in such liminal spaces, queers, criminals, rapscallions, and indeed ne'er-do-wells, I'd like to give you one interesting and perhaps unexpected example. At the time of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, when it was customary for German to be spoken in all Hungarian theatres, the cabarets in Budapest were where one would go to perform in Hungarian and to hear one's own language spoken. It would have been impossible to mount a full-scale theatrical production in Hungarian. It wouldn't have received the support that it required. But cabarets, being short and sharp and cheap and cheerful, were the perfect locale for this act of cultural resistance. Interestingly, the term cabaret is having a resurgence right now, just as I'm trying to propose the term Kleinkunst, which is inconvenient. With the rise of the so-called new cabaret, or even neo-cabaret, terms it is probably too difficult for me to deconstruct here.
Bingo!
Hey! Come on, young man. You've won sweets. My own intuition is that people using the term new cabaret as a genre would equate it with the term I've used, Kleinkunst, rather than singing on a cruise liner or lap dancing. Hence the new. There's an underlying sense that there's a need to rehabilitate the term in much the same way as neo-burlesque practitioners distance themselves from a narrow retrospective notion of burlesque by putting neo in front. I don't see much in this praxis that doesn't fall quite comfortably into the category of Kleinkunst. I would suggest that the material conditions under which this work is made, intimacy, accessibility, affordability, playfulness, liminality, are its defining characteristics. There is, I think, a Kleinkunst paradigm which entails an impulse towards self-parody. If we wish to contextualize this, we could imagine a family tree which is synchronic rather than diachronic. Variety in music hall as the parents, children call vaudeville a shady younger sister. You'd have to share the sweets. Do you feel like sharing? Are you feeling a liminal sense of communitas? You are?
Yeah.
There you go. Was that bingo? A round of applause.
Go back a couple of sentences.
Right, as if we were to contextualise it, we could imagine a family tree. Variety and music hall as the parents, with children called vaudeville, a shady younger sister called burlesque, and their sophisticated, slightly pretentious European cousin Kleinkunst. And their adopted illegitimate child stand-up party. Precisely because it is short and sweet and cheap and cheerful, Kleinkunst as a form is ideal for expressing subversive, resistant, and indeed unique voices, some of which then go on to become mainstream. Brecht, for example, started out in the cabarets of Berlin. My own view is, among the many attributes which make it such an attractive art form, is the mere fact that just when you run out of things to say, you can always cut to a musical number. I'm keen into a chair, would you be so kind? Johnny is the only star. Underneath his pale, pale skin, his blood is hot. Oh, when he plays the violin, men and women think of sin. When he aims his bow, they fall like they've been shot. Oh, when he turns his cap like eyes upon his chosen prey, ladies blush and men breathe sighs, and for his charms they'll pay. And the girl who plays the drums, underneath her breath she hums, dreaming of the afternoon when Johnny comes. Oh, is coming soon.